All right, we're recording. Yes. Hey, it's Rolf from Waves and Positions. I'm going to read you another fun story today. So, the whole point of my Substack is to educate people. And most of the things that I have on my Substack are really cool, interesting things, which I'll hear from all of you on your YouTubes and Instagrams, where I'm like, wow, I never knew that. And then I'll research it. And then here is a cool story for you. So, silver was kind of in the news in January. Silver was going up and down. Most people don't know that silver used to be money. So, now we have paper money and some coins, but silver for like a couple thousand years was money because gold is pretty scarce, but silver, there's enough of it in the Earth's crust that you can use it for money. Um, Gold can also be used for money. There's just less of it. So this is going to be the story of the silver mine that kickstarted the modern world. How one silver mine supercharged Spain, rewired global trade, and forced the invention of central banks. Now, everyone's heard of the Spanish Empire, but this is the story of like what made the Spanish Empire. Okay. Christopher Columbus came to the New World. One of the biggest genocides, or maybe unintentional, was just the spread of European disease that was quicker than even Europeans could get there. So entire civilizations were kind of wiped out before Europeans even got there. That's how fast the disease traveled. All right, so this is the discovery of the silver mine that basically created the first global superpower, Spain. So the real story starts in 1545. Spain didn't know it was holding a time bomb. In the high Andes of what's now Bolivia, Spanish colonists uncovered a mountain shimmering with silver. They called it Cerro Rico, the rich hill. It would become the most productive silver mine in human history. From this single mountain, Spain extracted more than half the world's silver for a century. Entire economies were built on its output. Cities grew, wars were funded, empires leaned on it. But what Cerro Rico gave, it also took. Because too much money too fast can break even the most powerful system in the world. Now we're going to take a step back and we're going to learn how this silver mine was even discovered. So there was a llama, the storm, and the mountain of silver. Now this is the legend. The legend goes like this. In 1545, a local man, Diego Hulapa, was chasing a runaway llama through the high Andes near what is now Potosi. As the sun set, a storm rolled in and Diego took shelter in a crevice on the mountain. To stay warm, he lit a fire against the rocks. By morning, the stones had melted and raw silver had poured out. That mountain became Cerro Rico. Within months, word spread. Within years, the Spanish crown had seized control, and within decades, that single mountain was supplying more than half the world's silver. It was a discovery born not of conquest, but of chance. A man chasing a llama through a storm, and the entire global economy would bend around what he found. Now, here's the hidden danger of silver. To understand what happened next, you have to first understand something strange about silver. It wasn't just valuable, it was money. Not backed by money, not valued like money, it was money. For thousands of years across Rome, China, Persia, and medieval Europe, silver coins were the backbone of trade. They were trusted, portable, and hard to fake. So when Spain suddenly gained control of a mountain of silver, it didn't just get rich, it became the first empire in history to face a new kind of crisis. What happens when your money supply explodes overnight? Spain's silver fueled empire machine. So before silver, Spain fought wars the old way, raising taxes, borrowing a little, and hoping for victory. After Cerro Rico, everything changed. Spain could now pay armies year-round, fund ships across oceans, build forts on every continent, and finance global war without waiting for taxes. It worked at first, but there was one problem. Spain was powerful before it was ready. It could raise money. It couldn't manage it. There was no central bank, no inflation control, and no tools to slow things down. And soon everything began to overheat. When money breaks markets, here's what the silver flood did to Europe. Prices soared on everything. Bread, wool, land, wages couldn't keep up. Cities faced budget crisis. Households struggled. Businesses fell behind. This wasn't just Spain's problem. Silver entered through Spain, but spread across Europe and into Asia. Even countries that never touched a coin of it felt the pressure. Spain had wealth, but it also had rising costs, an overpowered military, and a weak domestic industry. They bought more than they made, and they borrowed more than they earned. The first global debt crisis. Spain's kings didn't just spend what they had, they spent what they expected. They borrowed against future shipments of silver, then missed payments again and again. 4 major defaults in 40 years. It wasn't stupidity, it was scale. Silver flowed in unpredictable ways. Wars didn't wait. Bureaucracies were slow, and there was no central institution to regulate the flood. To solve this, Spain turned to private bankers, especially in Genoa, to front the money. Eventually, even the bankers ran out of patience. When they pulled back, Spain's system crashed with them. Silver goes global, but the power leaves Spain. Most people think of the Spanish Empire as the master of this system, but silver didn't stay in Spain. It flowed east to pay debts in Genoa, buy wool and weapons from Flanders, and settle accounts in Antwerp. It flowed west across the Pacific to the Philippines, where it was exchanged for Chinese porcelain, silk, and spices. Spain didn't use the silver to build its own industry. So here's the most important thing here. Spain didn't use the silver to build its own industry because it was too expensive. The labor costs were too high. They had to import everything. So it used the silver to buy from everyone else. So the Spanish wealth raised domestic prices so high that local factories couldn't compete. Labor was expensive. Imports were cheaper. So Spain became dependent on both the cloth of England, the cannons of France, the merchants of the Netherlands, and the bankers of Italy. And while Spain consumed, other countries industrialized to meet the demand. So you see what's happening here? Spain has a bunch of money, but instead of investing in their own country's infrastructure, they bought up everyone else's stuff. And that caused every other country to build up their industrial plant. So here we go. So other countries industrialized to meet the demand. The silver didn't just make Spain rich, it quietly built up everyone else. This was the first recorded case of what economists now call Dutch disease, when resource wealth makes it nearly impossible to build anything else. The central bank that didn't exist. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Silver didn't destroy Spain because Spain was corrupt. It destroyed Spain because no one had ever handled a windfall like this before. There was no Federal Reserve, no IMF, no central institution to slow spending during the booms, stabilize prices, smooth out shocks, or manage sovereign debt. Spain was learning painfully that money isn't neutral. Add too much too fast, and it doesn't just make things better, it reshapes everything. Wages, prices, politics, trade, and war. And when your commitments grow faster than your control, the same silver that built your empire starts to tear it down. The mountain that funded the modern world. Cerro Rico didn't just change Spain, it rebalanced the entire world. While Spain drowned in silver, England learned to spin wool faster. France improved artillery. The Dutch became shipping kings. German states laid the groundwork for future machines. Spanish demand was constant and backed by hard money, so other countries rose to meet it. They built industries that could sell into Spain's inflated market. The world got new factories, faster ships, better weapons, and eventually the first modern financial centers in Amsterdam and London. The silver paid for it all, but the power didn't stay with the source. That's the great irony of Cerro Rico. The mine that funded Spain's empire also helped build the rivals who would replace it. The lessons still hold. If your money outpaces your ability to produce, you'll end up importing your own collapse. Okay, cool. So that's the end of that story. But just a little extra for you is that later on, I have another story where most of the silver was already gone from Cerro Rico, but most people didn't know that. And Peru had control of it. And then Argentina had control of it. And then the man Bolivar, who's one of the colonial organizers in South America, created a country, Bolivia, just to hold Cerro Rico. So the entire country of Bolivia was invented to separate Cerro Rico from Argentina and Peru so they wouldn't, be in constant war over it. So if you ever wondered about Bolivia, the only problem was there wasn't a lot of silver left. So then here we go, addendum. Now, why that silver mattered and why the numbers look small now. So back then it was a lot of silver, but we have a much larger world economy now. So in the 16th century, silver wasn't just wealth, it was the money. Coins made of silver powered trade, taxes, and armies from Europe to China. At Cerro Rico, the ore was unusually rich and close to the surface. Early miners could see silver in the rock, break it out with hand tools, and process it with minimal technology. Over roughly a century, historians estimate Spain extracted about 40,000 to 50,000 metric tons of silver from the single mountain. That was enough to finance global wars, flood Europe with money, and reshape the world economy. Today, the scale looks very different. Modern industrial mining produces over 25,000 metric tons of silver every single year, often from low-grade ore using massive machinery, chemicals, and energy. In other words, the world now mines roughly half of Cerro Rico's century-long output every year. So why did Cerro Rico matter so much? Because the silver arrived fast, cheap, and easy at a moment when the global economy ran entirely on metal as money. Today, silver is just another industrial input. Then it was the bloodstream of the world. All right. Well, I'll have some links down to my Substack where you could reread this, and I have a list of references for further research. But this was really cool to me because you always hear about Spain. They were in the Philippines, they were in Mexico, California, South America, but you never knew what fueled the empire. And it was just this accidental discovery of the most massive silver mine of all time. So hopefully you learned something new, and I'm Rolf from Waves and Positions. I'll see you on the next one.